A video game's ending is arguably one of the most important aspects of the experience. After all, it's the last thing that you'll leave the player with, and even if you spend hours and hours crafting a wonderful and immersive story, if you don't stick the landing, then they're all going to be talking about that and nothing more. I mean, hell, some of us are still talking about the ending to games like Mass Effect 3 all these years later because it failed to live up to expectations. And as video games are continuing to walk down this path of grandiose storytelling and campaign lengths that are spiraling into hundreds and hundreds of hours, of course some of the messages are going to get lost in the mix. Even games like Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding has gone on record saying that even he doesn't understand it, so what hope do the rest of us have? Therefore, today we're going to talk about these endings that certainly left a final impression, but it was usually one of utter confusion. Whether they completely muddled the plot, absolutely butchered some of the character arcs, or just didn't make any sense at all, we're going to look at some of the times where games left you scratching your head, and not in a good way. With this in mind, I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are the 8 most confusing video game endings nobody understands. Number 8. Dreamweb. If you're a fan of dystopian films like Blade Runner, then you are sure to get a kick out of the underrated and quite bizarre game that is Dreamweb, which draws heavily on sci-fi neo-noir storytelling and is notable for its confidence to pull off a pretty complex storyline. However, a lot of people seem to have been irked by the ending of the game, which sees protagonist Ryan shot down by the police because of the crimes that he's committed throughout the game. Now, up until this point, we've been told that we're fighting a conspiracy thanks to premonitions we've been receiving through the Dreamweb. And come the close of this game, we've destabilized this rush for power. However, the ending of the game changes completely if you're to look inside the physical diary that was bundled with each copy of the game. The diary, written from the perspective of Ryan, actually spells out pretty clearly that nearly all of the events were completely fictional and a side effect of his psychosis. It turns a character that was a martyr fighting against a corrupt and oppressive evil into a mentally ill serial killer and completely changes the tone of the game. It's a fantastic experience nonetheless, but it's one that now, once you know, is tainted with a much darker theme. Number 7. LA Noire. While LA Noire is a fascinating example of technical prowess with their use of incredible face-capturing technology, there's a lot to be said about the rest of the actual game as well. Not all of it is as positive. While the shootouts and chase scenes are exhilarating and will often leave you enraged each and every time you lose your bloody hat, come the close of the game, there was a lot of discussion surrounding how the game wrapped up. People were annoyed that Cole seemingly began an affair that led him down a path which seemed completely out of character and was then killed off in such an offhand manner that fans were unsure if it was a ruse at their expense. Unfortunately, this wasn't the case, with Cole's funeral taking place and the bad guys effectively escaping without punishment. This leaves the real ending with you switching to Kelso and closing out the leads. It's something that doesn't feel right, and for the player, didn't feel at all fair. Yet you know what? That's Chinatown, baby. And I mean that in a very direct sense, because while this ending isn't satisfying in a Hollywood sense, the game does actually stay very true to its noir storytelling roots. In these tales, corruption affects even the most pure of heart and often sees the really terrible people get away with their crimes. However, it didn't help that Team Bondi were put through the creative ringer by a renegade director, leaving any through-line message to be completely chopped up, and that resulted in the fractured and confusing experience that we got in the end. Number 6. Leisure Suit Larry 3 Passionate Patty. Now let's be very clear, these games have not aged well. However, one thing that is forever enduring is that Sierra Entertainment always went above and beyond when it came to breaking the fourth wall. And things reach a different type of climax with the ending of Leisure Suit Larry 3, because this is easily one of the most crazy endings I've seen in a game yet. So what happens is that Larry has been kidnapped by some Amazonians and is being held captive. As the self-professed love of his life, Patty, you then track him down and end up in the same cage as him. Without any means of escape, things look bleak for our penile-focused protagonist. But wait, Patty then reveals that she has a magic marker which she uses to draw a portal and escape out of. Get it? Because it's magic. After falling through the portal, you end up, get this, on the set of Sierra Entertainment, who are making more of their hilariously offbeat games. After exploring the set, you finally leave to, air quotes, settle down in a simple programmer's hut, again implying that they're in a game within a game. And then Larry states that he's going to tell his story through the medium of another video game, and then implies that he himself programmed Leisure Suit Larry 1. What's that running out of my ear? Oh, it's my brain matter. Brilliant. Number 5. Eternal Sonata. There's something incredibly compelling about Eternal Sonata. For a start, it is utterly beautiful, and for another, it's got a truly unique concept. While at first may look like a generic JRPG, all of the events of the game are actually set inside the dying mind of composer Frédéric Chopin. Yes, that's right, all of this is a fever dream of the young musician and ends up taking on a rather complex stance on matters of life, death, and beyond. However, that's not even the most out there game moment, which actually comes to a head in the finale. You see, Chopin himself becomes the final boss, because it's an effort for him to kill the fever dream before it kills him, implying that the friends that you've made along the way and the experiences you've had were actually weakening his physical body, which leads to a massively confusing moment where, once defeated, why doesn't the dream end? After all, he's literally been beaten, his body has failed, and yet we see characters live on, with Polka, one of your allies, even being reborn and living on in the world long after Chopin's life has ended. Thus, we have to ask, was the dream even his to begin with? Why was Polka reborn? Why does Chopin's spirit see his body but not appear in the dream world and yet is dressed in his dream world outfit? It makes me think that I'm losing it come the end of Eternal Sonata. Number 4. Resonance of Fate. Never have I had the pleasure of playing a game that I've enjoyed so much but understood so little as with Resonance of Fate. Honestly, if I was to strip the storyline out of this title, it might well be one of my favourite RPGs ever made for its battle system alone, which combines wearing down your enemies through chip damage, then converting it into massive damage with other party members, and an acrobatic chain system that is one part Tony Hawk and other part The Matrix. It's honestly a joy to flip over enemies, blasting them with gunfire, and then landing only to cartwheel off into the distance. But when it came to the plot, things landed with far less grace. And that's thanks to how it handles its final boss come the close of the game. Up until this point, the plot had been muddled but fairly engaging, telling the story of a city that has risen above a polluted world and who now worship an AI that controls how long people live, drawing kind of a lot of parallels to Logan's Run. Yet after beating the final boss, the AI decides to keep him alive. Your party then shrugs and says, fine, whatever, let's bounce, and the world is now suddenly not polluted and ends with them taking a stroll in the wilderness. I'm sorry, what? What exactly happened here? Why has everyone just seemingly skipped 50 pages and is changing the trajectory entirely? Well, according to rumors, this ending was the result of studio pressures and the worry that a sequel, which was going to explain a lot of things in much more detail, wasn't going to get made. However, as a result, what we got was a game that was so convoluted that Sega weren't confident in marketing it massively, and so it became a self-fulfilling prophecy of doom and therefore dissipated without a trace. Number 3. Ecco 2 Tides of Time. At first glance, you might look at the Ecco games as simple, puzzle-solving, porpoise action complete with a charming soundtrack and rather lovely visuals. However, this is in actuality just a rather deceiving market strategy to sell the game, as after the first few levels, things really take a dark turn and end with Ecco taking on the Vortex Queen inside an alien spaceship. Yes, you heard me right. However, this is nothing compared to the sequel, which manages to up the levels of baffling to, well, almost baffling levels. After the main game closes, the player is able to chase the Vortex Queen to a time machine which she then uses, threatening to destroy the world's ecosystem. However, for some reason, this doesn't work, and instead, all she was able to do was manipulate things to such a degree that modern-day insects are now said to have descended from her actions. Okay, I'm kind of with you so far. Ecco also uses the time machine as well, but they go back to the time before the Atlanteans were wiped out. And that's the end of the game. That is all you get. You get no understanding as to what Ecco's plans were, nor why the Vortex Queen couldn't change things, nor even why Ecco didn't at least follow her to make sure that nothing happened. You just get nothing, which is as deflating as it is confusing. Number 2, Bayonetta. Now, when I play Bayonetta, it's actually quite hard to even focus on the plot thanks to the over-the-top action spectacle that is thrust upon the player at every given moment. I guess it's kind of impossible to care about the whys and the hows when you've got angelic forces the size of a barge trying to split your wig. However, if you find yourself taking a breather for a moment, you'll realize something, that the plot makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Things start off easy with the fact that Bayonetta is a witch who can, for some reason, use her hair as a weapon. She's got a classic case of amnesia and as such is pretty much in the dark as much as we are. Chased by the forces of God, we need to kick ass and keep her alive. What sounds pretty digestible, right? But what if I told you that even the basic lore is scattered all throughout the first game with seemingly little care for player understanding? And then you have completely unanswered questions like why she's being hunted down, why are there other witches that are seemingly on the side of evil but also declare that they hate it, why are these witch groups competing for some eye that will help reset the world, how did Bayonetta's dad know all of this, what the hell does being pure have to do with anything, and on top of all of this, who is that little kid who can be seen throughout the game? It's enough stress to make you go bold, and in Bayonetta's case, where her hair is also her suit, she probably doesn't want that to happen. And number 1, the town with no name. The storytelling conventions of video game The Town with No Name are like nothing else I have ever witnessed in a video game, ever. Now, I know that this is a comedy title and shouldn't be taken seriously, but my lord, I challenge you to find anyone who understands what on earth is going on. Now, things seem simple enough with the man with no name, who is not a Clint Eastwood-affiliated character, getting off the train and beginning a Wild West-infused romp of gunslinging and whiskey slugging. But things go off the deep end if you simply decide to board the train again before you do any of the main quest. In this instance, a young boy runs up to the man with no name and shouts, "Come back, Shane," to which your character proceeds to shoot the child in the head before informing him that, "My name's not Shane, kid." However, that's not all, because, get this, the train then flies off into outer space and then disappears. I am not joking, I had to check to see if I'd accidentally ingested some gone-off medication because of this, but that is seriously how you can end the game. This title is strange enough without this ending, but after witnessing this, I've never been more confused and laughed so hard. And there we go, those were 8 confusing video game endings that nobody understands. I hope that you enjoyed that, my friends, and please let me know what else you'd like to see on this list, because I might return and do a commented edition further down the line. I hope that you are well, and I hope that you enjoyed this, because remember, with a bit of positive mental thought and treating ourselves as fairly as we possibly can, both physically and mentally, we too can make sure that we all have happy endings, just like the ones that your mum gives me. Yes, I did save the one per list. You thought I'd forgotten it, but no, it's right here, and I'm mixing it with my lovely mental health message as well. Isn't that a confusing dichotomy? But all jokes aside, I do care, and I hope that you are well, because you deserve love, happiness, and success. We all do. Never forget that, and don't let anyone tell you any differently. If you want to speak to me further, you can do so at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter. As always, I've been Jules, you have been awesome, and I'll speak to you soon.